Old Hollywood sold a dream: beauty, class, and glamour wrapped in diamonds and cigarette smoke. But behind the velvet curtains and spotlight smiles were women who shattered every rule written for them. These weren't just actresses, they were fire starters. While studios tried to keep their reputations squeaky clean, these women were sneaking out the back doors of elite parties, starting affairs that could end careers, and turning their personal chaos into public fascination. Affairs with presidents, lovers vanishing mysteriously, addictions disguised as elegance, and a few stories so wild, even the tabloids backed off. Mae West, pleasure as power. Mae West didn't just break the rules, she rewrote them with a wink and a one-liner. While other stars played innocent on screen, Mae turned seduction into an art form and lived like it off camera too. She once joked, "I used to be Snow White, but I drifted," and drift she did, straight into the arms of hundreds, maybe thousands of lovers. But Mae wasn't reckless. She was strategic. She kept a rotation of muscular men, boxers, bodybuilders, stagehands, like a casting list for her bedroom. Some reports say she even hired men strictly for companionship, housed them in a nearby apartment, and called them in like room service. But what really set Mae apart wasn't the number of lovers, it was her control. She wrote many of her own screenplays, laced with suggestive dialogue that barely slipped past censors. And those lines, they were pulled straight from her real-life escapades. Her boldness was magnetic, but also threatening to a male-dominated industry. Behind closed doors, studios begged her to tone it down, but Mae doubled down instead. To her, intimacy wasn't taboo, it was power, and she wielded it unapologetically. Long before Hollywood was ready for someone like her. Tallulah Bankhead, chaos with a cigarette. Tallulah Bankhead wasn't just a scandal. She was the whole headline. With a southern drawl, a cigarette in one hand, and zero patience for Hollywood's double standards, Tallulah lived loud, fast, and unfiltered. She once declared, "I'm pure as the driven slush," and meant every word. Her lovers, men, women, actors, politicians, you name it. Her preferences were fluid, and her appetite, unrelenting. Some claimed she couldn't go a day without a fling, and she made no effort to deny it. She threw wild parties where clothes were optional, and conversations turned into escapades by midnight. One story claimed she once interrupted a formal dinner by proudly dragging her sleeping husband out of bed, just to show off his assets to curious guests. That was Tallulah, bold, hilarious, and borderline unhinged. But beneath the outrageousness was a woman who refused to be controlled. She mocked Hollywood's obsession with image, skipped film contracts that tried to muzzle her, and openly challenged the industry's morality code. While others tried to hide their affairs, Tallulah laughed them into the open. She didn't care who judged her. In fact, she welcomed it. To her, scandal wasn't something to avoid. It was something to own. Ava Gardner, destruction wrapped in red lipstick. Ava Gardner didn't walk into a room. She set it on fire. With a face sculpted like danger and a temper to match, Ava was the kind of woman you didn't forget, even if you wanted to. Frank Sinatra called her the greatest love of his life, but their love story played more like a demolition derby than a romance. They drank, fought, broke up, made up, and sometimes in the same night. Their passion was so intense, friends worried it would destroy them both. And in many ways it did. But Ava didn't stop with Sinatra. Ernest Hemingway admired her ferocity. Billionaire Howard Hughes chased her obsessively, only to be shrugged off. In Spain, she fell for matadors, celebrating their victories until dawn in ways that left little to the imagination. She was known to match, even outpace, her male lovers in both indulgence and recklessness. Ava once said her biggest regret was being too honest, but it was that same honesty that made her irresistible and dangerous. She didn't sugarcoat her flaws, and she didn't pretend to be anything she wasn't. For Ava, life was meant to be devoured, not tiptoed through, and anyone who tried to tame her got burned. Marilyn Monroe, longing in silk sheets. Marilyn Monroe was the fantasy every studio sold, but beneath the breathy voice and hypnotic smile was a woman starving for something real. To the world, she was the ultimate symbol of desire. But behind closed doors, Marilyn's pursuit of intimacy wasn't glamorous. It was desperate. She was said to crave affection constantly, needing physical closeness just to feel grounded. Some claimed she sought it several times a day, not out of lust, but to fill the silence inside. Her rumored affairs with President John F. Kennedy and his brother Robert weren't just tabloid gossip. They were whispered warnings. Too close to power, too reckless with secrecy. With baseball legend Joe DiMaggio, things turned obsessive. He adored her but couldn't handle her need for constant closeness and her refusal to dim her light. Even her co-stars weren't safe from her allure. Marlon Brando, Yves Montand. They fell under her spell, but none could give her the emotional safety she ached for. Behind the red lips was a girl who never felt fully loved. Marilyn wasn't out of control in the way people thought. She was unraveling quietly while the world applauded. She didn't need more attention. She needed someone to see her and stay, but no one ever did. Lana Turner. Love turned deadly. Lana Turner was Hollywood royalty with a face that could melt screens and a love life that eventually drew blood. She was known for whirlwind romances, steamy affairs, and emotional chaos that followed her like a shadow. But none were more infamous than her relationship with gangster Johnny Stompanato. Their chemistry was electric, their fights explosive, and their makeups just as intense. Friends whispered that they couldn't go a day without screaming or touching. Then the unthinkable happened. In 1958, during one of their violent arguments, Lana's teenage daughter, Cheryl Crane, fatally stabbed Stompanato with a kitchen knife. She claimed it was to protect her mother. The story sent shockwaves through Hollywood. The tabloids swarmed, the public gasped, and the studios panicked. But Lana stood tall, wrapped in grief and glamour, as if tragedy was just another role she had to play. Despite the scandal, Lana's career survived. Some say she used the drama to fuel her next performances. Others believe she never fully recovered from that night. Her love life never slowed either. 8 marriages, countless flings, and a legacy tangled in heartbreak. Lana Turner didn't just fall in love. She plunged headfirst, no safety net. And when she crashed, the whole world watched. Marlene Dietrich, the forbidden flame. Marlene Dietrich didn't just bend the rules. She lit them on fire and danced through the ashes. In a town obsessed with image and control, she wore tailored suits, kissed who she pleased, and dared anyone to stop her. Openly bisexual in an era of whispered secrets, Marlene made no apologies for her lovers, whether they were Hollywood heartthrobs or powerful women hiding behind pearls and marriages. Her affairs weren't just passionate, they were strategic, poetic, and dangerous. She carried on coded love affairs through letters, often disappearing for weekend retreats that were anything but innocent. Studio heads, writers, political elites, all fell under her spell. Rumors swirled about a secret rendezvous with a first lady. Others claimed she seduced a Nazi officer just to steal intelligence during the war. Dietrich's persona blurred fantasy and truth, often by design. Her diary hinted at escapades that read like noir fiction. Rooftop trysts, midnight escapes, and whispered confessions beneath champagne bubbles. But she never confirmed a thing. That was her power. While other actresses fought off rumors, Marlene cultivated them. She wasn't out of control, she was in full command. And for a woman in her era, that was the most scandalous act of all. Jean Harlow, heat behind the platinum smile. Jean Harlow wasn't just Hollywood's first blonde bombshell, she was its original heartbreaker. Beneath the platinum curls and bubbly charm was a woman whose off-screen life burned hotter than any script. Her marriage to MGM executive Paul Byrne ended in tragedy just 2 months in, when he was found dead under suspicious circumstances. Officially ruled a suicide, rumors hinted at something darker, questions that still linger decades later. But Jean didn't slow down. Her flirtation game was legendary, with whispers of lunch break liaisons and sultry encounters tucked between filming takes. Co-stars like Clark Gable couldn't resist her, and neither could the studio bosses who lined up to be part of her orbit. Her beauty got her in the door, but it was her unfiltered wit and raw sensuality that left people dizzy. Friends said she treated love like a game, but played it with the confidence of someone who always won. She blurred the line between seduction and performance, often using charm like a weapon. But behind that glow was fragility. Jean battled health issues, studio pressure, and the weight of being everyone's fantasy. She died at just 26, turning her into a myth. A woman who lived fast, loved recklessly, and left too soon. Joan Crawford, ambition in silk gloves. Joan Crawford didn't climb to the top of Hollywood. She clawed her way up in heels and diamonds, leaving broken hearts and burned bridges in her wake. From the outside, she was elegance personified. But off camera, Joan was a master of calculated passion, using her allure not just for love, but leverage. She was rumored to have had a long-running affair with Clark Gable, even while he was married. Their chemistry on screen was undeniable, but insiders claimed it didn't end when the camera stopped. Then came whispers of romantic ties to powerful studio execs like Louis B. Mayer, men who could make or break careers. Joan didn't just flirt, she negotiated with lipstick and silk. But she didn't limit herself to men. Gossip columns hinted at secret relationships with women, including Greta Garbo, though nothing was ever confirmed. Her ambition was unmatched, and if love opened doors, she walked through them without hesitation. Joan's obsession with control extended to her public image. Always polished, always perfect, but behind the couture was a woman who feared irrelevance more than scandal. Her love life wasn't just passionate, it was tactical. And for Joan Crawford, survival in Hollywood meant being desirable, ruthless, and unforgettable, all at once. Clara Bow, the it girl who couldn't escape the rumors. Clara Bow was the original it girl, the face of the roaring 20s with a wild spirit studios couldn't package fast enough. But fame came with a cost, and Clara paid in whispers, scandals, and betrayal. Off-screen, she was vivacious, impulsive, and unapologetically herself. That terrified the industry and excited the press. Her Brooklyn accent, bold personality, and refusal to play ladylike made her both beloved and controversial. Parties, rumored affairs, and suggestive behavior followed her everywhere. Some stories were exaggerated, others were weaponized. A disgruntled former employee once leaked stolen letters and claimed Clara lived in moral ruin, prompting one of the ugliest smear campaigns in early Hollywood history. Meanwhile, her father, tasked with managing her finances, reportedly squandered her fortune. When Clara finally tried to take control, the damage was done. She spiraled, battling exhaustion, anxiety, and depression, all while being portrayed as a scandalous figure rather than a young woman pushed to the brink. By her late 20s, she walked away from the spotlight completely. The same public that once adored her turned cold. Clara's downfall wasn't caused by her behavior. It was caused by a system that couldn't handle a woman who refused to be tamed. She was Hollywood's wild child until they shut the gates on her. Jayne Mansfield, the bombshell who played with fire. Jayne Mansfield didn't just walk into the spotlight. She crashed through it in pink heels and a plunging neckline. Seen by many as Marilyn Monroe's louder, bolder rival, Jayne leaned hard into the bombshell persona. But behind the bubbly giggle and playful charm was a woman who knew exactly what she was doing. She turned heads, stole scenes, and made controversy her co-star. One photograph, Sophia Loren glaring at Jayne's daring neckline, became a defining moment of her career. But Jayne didn't flinch. She knew attention was currency, and she spent it recklessly. Her relationships were just as over the top. Rumored affairs with Hollywood elite, whispers of a fling with JFK, and a bizarre, shadowy connection to Anton LaVey, the founder of the Church of Satan. Some claimed she flirted with him just to stir up headlines. Others believed it went deeper and darker. Tragically, Jayne's life was cut short in a horrific car accident at just 34. LaVey would later suggest he placed a curse on Jayne's boyfriend, who also died in the crash, adding a layer of eerie mystery that still lingers. Jayne Mansfield lived like a firecracker, loud, bright, and impossible to ignore. And when she burned out, she left behind a legend wrapped in scandal and glitter. These weren't just actresses, they were forces of nature. Women who dared to want more than roles written by men in smoky boardrooms. They chased desire, defied expectations, and lived lives that blurred the line between glamour and chaos. Some found power in seduction, others were consumed by it, but all of them carved their names into Hollywood's golden walls. Not with politeness, but with passion, scandal, and rebellion. Their stories weren't fairy tales. They were raw, complicated, and often tragic, but they mattered because behind every headline, every whispered affair, and every studio cover-up was a woman refusing to shrink herself for anyone. Hollywood tried to polish them, control them, even erase them, but they wouldn't go quietly. And maybe that's why we're still talking about them, because the world remembers the women who refused to behave and burned their way into history instead.